Hey, Herrst, Alter, was ist das?
Do you speak English?
What is this? What is all this for?
Oh, this is just for Schnitz and Giggles.
Schnitz and Giggles!
Welcome to Schnitz and Giggles, the podcast that stumbles upon the humor of cross-cultural confusion and life in Vienna, Austria, through the experiences of an Auslander and his Wiener.
Brought to you by the Edelweiss Crackers.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for the purpose of entertainment only and is not a replacement for therapy.
Well, guten hallo and welcome back to the Schnitz and Giggles podcast. I'm Michael.
I'm Lucas.
And we've had some weather here in good old Wien.
Yeah, whether you believe it or not.
Yeah, weather or not. Oh, here we go.
We're off to a bad start already.
Yeah, maybe we'll redo this. Yeah, we've had some pretty heavy days of rain, so we're really dated on this episode, so you know exactly when we're recording this. But 4 or 5 days of pretty much consistent water falling from the sky. Mm-hmm. What rain is.
And so we thought we would go with the flow.
Hey-o.
And talk a little bit about the good and the bad parts of flooding in Vienna and the surrounding areas.
Yeah, it actually gives a pretty cool opportunity to talk about a pretty interesting feature that maybe goes unnoticed in the city. The way the city has responded to the presence of a river.
Right. What river could that be?
So, as many of you might know, and if you don't know, now you know, the city of Vienna is built on the Danube.
It's built on the Danube.
It's built near the Danube.
Like Venice built
on the shores of the Danube.
Okay, that's more precise.
Known as the Donau in German.
Exactly.
Yeah. And pretty unique river. It's a pretty long river. I think it has the most world capitals situated on it.
Yeah, it starts off in Germany and then goes all the way to the Black Sea and passes through lots of capital cities like Budapest or Bratislava.
Yeah.
And Vienna.
Yeah.
And maybe some more.
Yeah, probably a couple more.
Yeah, but it's one of the largest rivers in Europe.
Yeah, so obviously, historically, settlements started on the shores of rivers. But I think Vienna is kind of unique in that the river was kind of wild in the early days of the settlement. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of control through this area. Like one big river became a lot of little rivers and very marshy. Marshy.
It's a nice word.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's use it more often.
Well, okay. When we talk about rivers and marshes, we'll describe things as marshy. We've had, as mentioned, a lot of rain. When there's a lot of rain throughout a region, it can flow into rivers and create higher levels than normal.
Yeah. Yeah. The sad part of the whole story is that it has been one of the biggest and worst floods that Austria has ever witnessed. And a couple people even lost their lives. The rain was coming and the rivers coming in so fast that some of them even couldn't even leave their houses.
Yeah, I think I read 4 or 5 times the normal expected amount of rain for this month fell within 4 days.
Right. Within a couple of days, they had more than 1 month of rain. Yeah. It was incredible. Especially now it's September, pretty warm. So the week before, there was more like a warning of wildfires, don't go into the forest and start a fire because it's so dry. And then a week later, they had warnings for avalanches because it cooled down so quickly that lots of the rain turned into snow, and there's now lots of snow on the mountains.
Yeah, the quick change, I think, in the weather was something that took a lot of people by surprise. Obviously,
right.
Just 2 weeks ago, people were swimming in the Donau and enjoying nice warm weather, and then just a week later, having warnings to stay as far away from the river as you can. And a lot of the places, specifically outside of Vienna, that I think really experience the brunt of the flooding and entire towns along the river that are flooded with a couple meters worth of water and people not being prepared for it. And it kind of surprising people, and some sad stories of
it's sad stories. However, most of the people were in some ways prepared, but not prepared for as much of what happened. They've been really good at preparing those flood control plans in the last couple of years and decades, because it's not the first flood that we ever had. But the sheer amount of water that came down the mountains and from the skies was something that they couldn't even prepare for in many ways. And northern Austria was hit the worst, and even like the Czech Republic and going all to Eastern Europe, like Poland and down to Romania. Lots of these places were flooded, and severe damages were reported from all these areas.
Yeah, I think along those lines, it's kind of a cool opportunity to talk about even what these plans and things that the city of Vienna has done over the previous decades to really change the landscape.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, quite literally, some of the work that they did with the flood control channel and everything else has really, if you were to time travel back even 150, 200 years ago, the entire landscape of the city would be very unfamiliar.
Right.
Especially when it comes to the side of the river that we're on.
Yeah, the other side, the wrong side of the river.
Yeah, the side opposite the oldest part of the city.
Exactly. But before you go there, let's travel back even more.
Ooh, farther back.
Just to give our audience an idea of the meaning of the river Danube in history, because as you know, the Roman Empire had its borders pretty far stretched out.
Yeah.
And one of the main border lines of the Roman Empire was the Danube.
Yeah.
So north of the Danube, the side that we're currently on recording this, was the country of the barbarians.
Yeah, appropriately enough.
Yeah.
That's where we're recording.
And the civilized world was just on the other side of the river.
Correct.
The
We don't go there very often.
The Roman Empire ended with the Danube, and it was just such a great borderline because of the fact that most of the times it's really hard to cross that river if there's no bridges out there, which there weren't any bridges back then. So that was just great as a protection from either side, from any enemies. You can even see the enemies coming if they were attempted to come across the river.
Yeah, the main flow of the Donau is quite impressive. I mean, it's pretty wide in most spots, and I don't know what the actual depth is. Perhaps we have that in some of our research, but fairly deep river that would, just very difficult to get across.
Usually I think it's around 5 meters at least, or 6, something like that, in Vienna. Yeah. Because the river bed might be deeper at other places, of course, and along the whole river. So the Romans were pretty smart people, as we all know, and they found a spot where they could build a fort that was sort of safe from flooding. And when they built that, they called that, not the only, of course, but one of them they built along the river was called Vindobona, which is the original cell of today's Vienna and used to be a Roman town.
Yeah, and there's still quite a bit of evidence of that established community still here today.
Exactly.
Some really cool spots that you can go check out, which might be a whole different podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because if you just start digging in the ancient areas in the inner city, they usually dig up some Roman stuff, some Roman house or some Roman plates, pots, jewelry. They find all kinds of things in the ground from 2,000 years ago. So the Romans left a mark on Vienna, and the inner city that we now call the first district, that was pretty much protected from floods all through the centuries, because it's a very good, it was built on a very solid foundation, and the Danube never really came up there, except maybe for like not severe flooding. It's not like the St. Stephen's Church was flooded by the Danube, so it's not that bad.
Well, certainly the geography of the city of Vienna, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell now when you're within the city, but it is raised up. There's hills on the I guess the south side of the river, and
right.
It flattens off on the north side pretty quickly.
Exactly. You don't see it as much because of the
all the buildings.
The buildings.
That, I mean, when you're walking around and you're taking some trams,
if you
realize
if you ride your bike, you might notice. This is uphill. Oh my!
Yeah, there is quite a bit of uphill and downhill throughout the city.
But as the city expanded, and this is what you were already referring to, especially in the last 150 years. Yeah. The city grew and grew, and to the west and the south, it wasn't a big problem because it's just goes up to towards the hills and the forests.
Yeah, but you get farther away from the river.
That's true. However, they also tried to settle in the northern parts where the Danube was, and that was really a risky undertaking because sometimes you might not see your house anymore because it's gone. It's done.
Well, yeah, that's with what is now the Donau Canal. Mm-hmm. That was one of the more, I guess, the deeper, more navigable portions of the river that was used for shipments of goods in trade and things like that. And on the other side of that is where it really turned into kind of a mess of smaller rivers and marsh and swamp type area. And so I know that at some point in one of the darker moments of Austrian history, where it might have been Leopold kicked out of the first kicking Jews out of the city, moved them into what is now the second district, which is now just like any other part of the city and is still even...
It's Leopoldstadt.
Yeah, but that's where he kicked them out to and forced them to live in what was just very dangerous area, kind of a bad place to try to establish a settlement.
Yeah, that's where today's the Prater area is.
Yeah.
Where you have like the amusement park and the giant Ferris wheel. Really nice places these days.
Yeah,
but back in the day,
a place where people want to live and where a lot of construction is happening now and a lot of increased development. But to look back at the pictures of a few hundred years ago, or the paintings, I guess, describing that place as nothing like what it is today. So how'd that happen?
Well, glad you're asking.
The water didn't just go away.
No.
The river, I mean, I guess the water did kind of go away, but not on its own, not naturally.
With the river, the water always goes away, but it always comes back to
science.
Well, in the end, it's all water under the bridge, isn't it? But
all right, let's continue.
Yeah, let's continue. So you could all pull that up in like history books. We don't have to go into all the details in the.
Sure.
There were major floods, in the 16th century and 17th century, 18th century. But what really was a game changer was in the 1870s. There was another big flood, and the people of Vienna said, "We need to do something severe. Like we have to make a severe change to the whole topology of Vienna.
Yeah,
we have to change the river, the way it flows."
Yeah,
they created some channels, and what you call the Donaukanal is basically one remaining original, we call them side arms, that was part of the original Danube, and they tried to make it flow through the city quicker and kind of gave it a channel to flow through.
Build it up so that it's more controlled, put the walls up a little bit so that it doesn't overflow as easily.
Yeah, so they try to secure the shores and everything. Yeah. And that was quite the improvement. So there were even more flood threats despite this regulation that happened in the 1870s. And they were thinking about it for a long time. It actually took them until the 1970s.
Yeah.
After there was some really bad floods in the 1950s, I think. So they said we have to build an even better system.
Because at that point, the river is still, even though they have the Donaukanal and they have some control of the river, it's still
but the main river
spread out quite a bit into the north side of the riverbanks, and still not a lot of control over where the water's going so much.
Yeah. So what they did is they declared some part of the land next to the Danube, like on the northern part, just as floodland.
Like a floodplain.
Like a floodplain, yes.
Yeah.
And so that was a good idea, but still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And so someone saw a rising opportunity here. And before the waters are brought to rise again, they say, what about if we dig basically a huge trench throughout the whole city, like all the way from the north to the south, and not only stop there, but anything we dig up, we pile it up and make...
The dirt's got to go somewhere.
The dirt's going to go somewhere, and we're going to use it again and make a big, big, big dam that will protect us. And so that's what they just did starting in the 1970s, going into the 1980s. So if you look at the map of Vienna right now, you will see if you see the labeling, you see the Donau, and then there's actually a second river. It's called Neue Donau.
Yeah.
The Neue Donau is now the original part that was just the floodplains.
Yeah.
But they took everything out, and the little land strip in between is called today the Donauinsel, which just translates as Danube Island.
Yeah.
So some people have said they were very creative with doing all these things, but not creative with the labeling.
Well,
so it's like, what do you call this? You call it island. Yeah. And we call this new trench, what is it? It's the new Danube. It's the new Danube. It's a Neue Donau. And they cut off some of the old channels as well, which is now referred to as the Alte Donau.
Yeah.
So the Alte Donau is a very nice place to swim in the warm season. As well as the Neue Donau, you can also go swimming there. You shouldn't go swimming in the actual Danube because it will take you all the way to Bratislava in a couple of minutes, even if you're a good swimmer.
Yeah.
So you should respect what even the ancient Romans were still respecting back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
The forces of nature.
How this project that was very much an infrastructure project, something to just almost in some ways an approach to make the city more livable in a survival way, created kind of one of the now kind of pretty significant landmark within the city that's used by its people and by tourists alike.
Yes, that's really, I really like that part of the story of Vienna because it's, one part is the necessity and the danger, and it has led to having created one of the really beautiful parts of Vienna that weren't there originally. So you have the Neue Donau, this parallel artificial channel that they would when the rain comes, as it just did recently, they just open up all the gates, and the overflow from the Danube goes into that side channel, and therefore the Danube that goes through Vienna does not.
So they didn't just dig out a trench; they constructed some big gates, dam type of things on either end where they can release water if there's too much and increase the flow if there's too much in the main channel of the river.
Right.
So it was really a pretty impressive project.
Right.
When you really look at, you look at it now and it looks pretty natural.
Yeah, it's like, why not? Like this
looks like this was always here.
It was always here.
But it really was a pretty impressive feat of human engineering to dig all that out and create a whole new landmass within the city.
Yeah, some call it's one of Europe's most advanced flood protection systems. So many other cities should have done something like that.
Hey, this is weird. We're getting a call.
Oi. I know. Should we pick up? Hello?
Hey guys.
Oh, hi.
It's your old buddy, Spruce.
Spruce Wayne. You're calling us?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Yeah, well, we're doing fine. We're just talking about some things in Vienna, the Danube flooding.
Yeah. I just heard you say that it's the most impressive flood control project in all of Europe.
Well, I said it's one of them.
Well, I think you were just saying that to kind of hedge your bets.
So, what are you implying?
Well, I don't know if you remember from my last call, but I live in the Netherlands.
Oh yeah.
You know, where the grocery store chain was developed.
Oh yeah, the famous one.
Yeah. We know a little bit about floods here in the Netherlands.
What do you know about floods? Come on.
Our entire country is below sea level.
Okay, that's a good point.
I don't know if you've ever heard a story about a little boy who saved the Netherlands by sticking his finger in one of the levees. You ever heard that story?
No, but I'm not sure where this story is going. I'm a little concerned now.
That was me.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah, that was my entry into superhero mode.
Oh, you saved the Netherlands.
Yeah, I was part of it. I stuck my finger in a hole. And it wasn't that big of a deal.
Just one finger.
Yeah, I saw the water leaking through, and so I decided to stick my finger in.
Great.
That seems pretty impressive, right?
If you saved the whole country, that.
Yeah, I didn't dig a hole. I didn't dig a trench.
Yeah, that's what we did in Vienna because
I sacrificed my body.
So do you still have that finger?
Well, yeah. I pulled it back out.
Oh, very smart.
Yeah, somebody came in with a sandbag. They were able to put it up there.
So are you saying your fingers are as thick as sandbags? Well,
I am Spruce Wayne.
Well, you seem to have special skills.
Yeah, so I guess what you guys have done in Vienna is pretty cool too. I just wanted to let the listeners know that, there are some pretty other cool flood control projects that have happened in Europe. It's not all about you.
Well, thanks for pointing it out. We weren't saying it was the only nice project.
That's what I heard your tone.
Okay. Well,
how did you... we're just recording the episode now, Spruce. I don't understand how you...
Well, I have my ways.
Have you been bugging our studio?
Yeah, you guys have made it kind of hard. You keep moving studios around. But I am Spruce Wayne.
All right, dude. We're going to go now.
All right, just, don't forget us.
I'm sorry, Spruce, but this is a podcast about living in Austria, so I'm sorry if we're not mentioning everything about the Netherlands.
But it's good to hear from the Netherlands.
Yeah, all right.
What they're up to.
See you guys later.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, good talking to you, bud. Whew. Well, all right, well, we may need to keep moving in our studio.
Yeah, we're going on the one side of the Danube and the other side of the Danube. Like we've been moving back and forth and still.
Yeah, we try to switch it up a little bit. I didn't realize that he had such an intricate listening network.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we have to go to Transylvania to?
Yeah, don't say where we might go.
Yeah. I'm just trying to mislead him.
Yeah, we'll go all the way.
He seems like a great detective.
Yeah, obviously, it's a human story of man versus nature trying to control the places you're in.
And what I was before, we're still confused with this call here.
I don't know.
Yeah, but before Spruce,
how do we catch back on after that
before
call?
Spruce called, I was making this big intro about how beautiful that part of the other side of the coin is like the one is the dangerous and the life-threatening flood protection program.
Yeah, right.
Let me rephrase it. The flood protection program is not life-threatening, but
Well,
you know what I was going to say. The life-threatening part.
its purpose.
Its purpose is
to protect life.
protect life.
And property.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still confused with his colors. I'm so good old Spruce.
We called Rude Wayne.
Rude Wayne.
That one's so great. Thanks for laughing, though. That was nice.
There's actually a soccer player called Ruud Nistelrooy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he used to play for a long,
Yeah,
long
he's
time ago.
retired now. Yeah.
So Ruud is actually a Dutch
Yeah,
name.
it would work. Yeah.
Ruud.
All right, we're getting off track here.
We're getting off track here.
So not only did it serve to save people's lives, but
But now it's a 21-kilometer long island.
yeah.
And that's easy to ride your bike on because it's super flat all the way through.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's a good description or a good example, I think, of like that Austrian blend of like serious, get a job done, but also the enjoying of life and nature and having this multi-use and not just putting apartments up on it or making it into another part of the city, but really protecting it and creating an outdoor space for people to enjoy.
I think what you're getting at is quite spot on with the Viennese and the Austrian mindset is when we build things, we just don't want to build stuff, but then we look at it and we say, hey, we need to make this beautiful too. Yeah. And so the Donauinsel is really a really nice recreational space where, I mean, thousands of people go there.
Absolutely.
Every year. You could just go there for a swim for free.
Yeah.
And they put up stuff like beach volleyball and like all kinds of playgrounds. And
yeah, the Donauinsel is really rivals the Prater in that way as being a centralized location where people can enjoy the outdoors in the middle of the city.
Right.
So really from most parts of the city, within a half an hour, you can be in the water.
Yeah, you can be there.
You could be riding your
easily.
bike along the shores of the river on a pretty well-maintained path. And there's lots of little swimming docks spread out along the place. Where
There's even spots where you can barbecue.
Yeah, little grill plots.
Did you know that even like when you have to sign up for one of those spots for certain time slots?
Oh, do you?
But if you do, the city of Vienna will actually provide you with some firewood.
Is that right? Wow,
If you're
I'm
like,
learning something here.
I'm
I
going to
didn't
go
know
there.
that.
Like, I'll be there on Saturday, whatever the date is. Yes, 10 o'clock. And
they give you wood?
They actually will even give you wood. At least they used to. I don't know if they changed that, but a couple of years ago it was still in place.
I thought they were just kind of available, first come, first serve. You just show up, and if there's one,
you can reserve one of these spots, and they want you to use those spots and not any kind of place anywhere because
you don't want fires.
You don't have fires. Yeah, so they put up some safe locations where you can actually make some fire, and then they will support you doing that. And that's not only the wood, but the whole island is one of the reasons why Vienna comes out top every year with the quality of living, because like you just said, it just takes you a couple minutes and you can literally be on an island.
Yeah.
You have a beach vacation before you go back to the office. You can go there during a lunch break if you like.
Yeah, it's certainly as much as I love it, it's a poor substitute for actually being on a real beach.
I mean, you as a Californian, I understand what you're saying here.
But it is a substitute. There's certainly been some moments where it's scratched that itch of being near a body of water, which I like to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly the accessibility of it and the amount of places that are along the shoreline where you can post up, you throw down your towel and have a nice gentle swim either in the Alte Donau or the Neue Donau, or just right there on the Donauinsel. Yeah. There's plenty of spots. Like, it's never going to be a point where it's so crowded. There are places that will get super crowded, but there's always a spot where you can find access to the water and not have to pay a thing.
Right. That's the best thing. It's completely for free. And there are two spots where there's two U-Bahn stops, the U6 and the U1. So those places, of course, will be slightly more crowded because it's close to all the public transportation. But if you just keep on walking a couple meters, maybe a kilometer, it will get less and less frequent that you have other people.
Yeah, I think I've appreciated what it seems like the city has really been focusing on in recent years along the Neue Donau with the Copa Beach.
Oh yeah, the Copa
build
Beach,
up and all the pop-up restaurants that are there during the summer, and they just did a big project this last year with a bunch of like platforms right along the river on the Donauinsel side, where there's just a lot of places where it's not just going along and finding a spot at the river. Like, they're creating nice flat areas, comfortable areas for people to enjoy. It's nice to see the city invest in those things.
There's one word of warning that I still need to mention concerning the Donauinsel.
Okay.
Because that always throws off any tourists or people moving here to Vienna.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
Because if you ever watch out for those 3 letters, if you ever see in German FKK, so FKK.
Yeah.
FKK means Freikörperkultur and simply translates to it's just a nude beach.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We just have a very long fancy term for it, Freikörperkultur.
It has
to be official. So it sounds very
documented. And
everything. Very fancy
Austrian.
word. I mean, you have to travel down the islands for quite some time before you get there. It's supposed to be a little closed off.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised if you see some people who are just enjoying nature as natural as it can get.
Yeah, but we don't want to mislead people too much. There are many spots, if you're walking around the Donau, that you might find people who are in various states of undress.
Of clothing.
Yeah.
That's true, yes. That's probably the European thing about it.
Right.
But in that area, they have this place declared for them. But they might not be
There's
limit
just
themselves.
a lot more.
There's just a lot more. There's a lot more.
Everybody is this way.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a good warning, I'd say, for especially for Americans who are on tour or who are moving here maybe and wanting to just go out for a nice afternoon swim, and you might not be used to seeing various parts of people's bodies exposed.
And before you get the wrong idea,
crowds.
in many ways, you don't want to see it because it is not like aesthetically like not everyone looks like Schwarzenegger.
It's always a bit of a shock.
Yes.
But it can be very off-putting to the American sensibility where, those things are frowned upon, public nudity and such, and it's culturally very less frowned upon, or at least less bothered
over here.
That's certainly something to be aware of, if you're bothered by that.
You might even see some of it in public swimming pools.
Yeah.
Some people are just they don't really care as much.
Yeah,
they just want to have a nice tan.
Yeah.
Maybe grant them a nice tan.
I guess. But yeah, it's just a good reminder this week, I think, of just the very practical nature of the flood control channel. But even with this approach to control the river and maintain the riverbanks and have the water going in a nice clean way, sometimes nature is indeed more powerful than what we try to put up. Because I mean the banks of the Donau, both the Neue and Alte, maybe not the Alte Donau so much because that has less flow coming through.
Yeah, there's no real flow.
But certainly the main flow of the river was overflowing its banks in many spots. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, down at along the banks of the Neue Donau at Kopa Beach, like all the places where the restaurants were placed just a couple weeks ago was now completely underwater.
Right. But Vienna did not really have to report any casualties.
Right.
The worst casualties or the worst effects of the flood in Vienna was because of trees that have fallen over because of the whole rain and storm, or like branches being
which I'm
broken
glad
up.
you brought that up. So just a description of how great the services are in the city. There was a tree just near our house on the corner that, because I guess of the saturated water, the tree just fell over, like the root ball and everything. It just tipped over and was there. And I walked past it in the morning at some point, maybe 10 o'clock, got home just after lunch, 1:30 or so. The tree was already cut up and gone.
Yes.
And when I walked past it, I guess it most likely maybe fallen over sometime in the evening. There was a caution tape around it so people wouldn't get too close to this fallen tree or whatever. So conceivably, within 12 hours of this tree falling, it was chopped up and removed. It's incredible. This city.
I mean, this city, you have to consider that there are about 2 million people living here, and nobody has died, even though there was the worst flood in ages now, or ever, it seems, for some parts. And the worst thing that happened is that some people got injured because of those trees. And now Vienna closed all the parks, and there are more or less like 1,000 public parks in Vienna.
Yeah, they all have tape around them.
And the city of Vienna has just committed to check every single tree in every single park. And I heard there's more than 400,000 trees in those 1,000 plus parks.
Makes sense. There's lots of parks.
There's lots of parks, yes, and huge parks sometimes.
Yeah.
So they had to check like all of Schönbrunn and everything. So it's amazing that Vienna said, okay, we won't risk the safety of our citizens. We're not going to open up those parks until we have checked every single branch of every single tree and all the roots and the grounds if it's safe to open up again. And so that's how dedicated Vienna is concerning the quality of life and the safety of its people.
Yeah, the commitment to public safety is obviously pretty high here. And yeah, it is pretty incredible. I mean, obviously it's super tragic and sad, the stories that you hear outside of the city of people who lost their lives because of, the effects of the flood, whatever that looked like. But as you said, to have a big city with a lot of drainage channels, a lot of areas that could overflow and did, that are within pretty heavily populated areas of the city, and to just have property damage. And really the worst thing to come out of this within the city, of course, is that some of the U-Bahn lines have been shut down.
Yeah, right. So,
between a couple stations,
exactly.
Where they were just too,
they're too close to the
obviously
water.
The U6 is basically runs through a drainage culvert, so it makes sense that you can't necessarily have the train running.
But yeah, some basements were flooded, and of course property was damaged, but people are still alive. And,
yeah, exactly.
And I think that's another part of the same coin when we've been addressing this a bit, and I think we should talk more about the whole idea of people correcting each other in Austria and in Vienna, like where they use the Schimpfen.
Yeah.
When they kind of tell you to act according to the standards and to the laws and everything. In the end, really, this is because we love the order here. And the order, in the end, really protects life. So the fact that we have registered every single tree in Vienna, like we know how many trees there are. Somebody knows, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's people like just in charge for all these things, where in other countries, there's a park out there, there's some trees out there and nobody cares about the well-being of the nature and the trees over there. So this is really where Vienna is. Sometimes as a Viennese, I feel it's over the top, like with all those regulations, and there's a law for everything, and it's just so.
Well, and every tree in the Prater has an identification medallion on
stuff
it.
like that. Yeah,
like every single tree has a number attached to it, and you can call up and say, "Hey, tree number 5029 looks a little leany right now," and they'll send somebody out.
Right. You need an actual permit to cut down a tree even.
Yeah.
And then there's some people might even come from the state of Vienna and look at the tree before and say, okay, well, you can cut it down now because of it's sick or dead or something.
Yeah, which obviously a lot of people kind of can bristle against that type of control over individual freedoms. But that overall tendency to correct and follow the order is also a very, very personally driven motivation, because life is good for most people when people follow the established ways of doing things. That is something that comes out in the day-to-day interactions here in the city. And
that's kind of the irony of the law, how law can create more freedom, how more rules can create freedom, because you have the freedom now to go to the Donauinsel or go back to a park once they open up again,
right,
and just enjoy the beauty of the city because of all the regulations that had been there in the first place. And we don't like rules usually, like we tend to rebel against, especially when I think this is a stupid rule. But somehow it makes sense, and somehow this makes the city the best city of all, the entire world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even Spruce Wayne might have to agree.
I don't know. He seems fairly disagreeable. So if you're in Vienna, you come to Vienna. You may see it in a tourist book, something about the Donauinsel. Take some time to take a look, take a nice little walk if you're here during the nice time of the year.
Yeah.
It's a nice place to enjoy a little picnic.
Right.
You might come across there seems to be, especially during the summer months, there's always something happening, whether it's a big festival type concert, smaller little pop-up stages, volleyball tournaments.
I even forgot that the Donauinsel Fest, that's one of the biggest things. It's one of the largest festivals, open air festivals in Europe.
Yeah.
That happens every year in Vienna at the Donauinsel, and they have international acts coming there. It's all free of charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to pay a thing just to see some great artists, local and international ones. And it's huge. Like every year they have it's a one weekend. I think they have 1 or 2 million people every year just visiting from outside. And
yeah, there's so much space. So when you consider a 21 kilometer long island, and it's not super wide, but it certainly has spaces to fit these types of people, and the city uses it to increase the quality of life and let visitors to the city enjoy a unique part of city life.
Right. And even if you happen to visit during the cold season, I mean, you can still go for a walk there and walk by the river.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a place where people are riding their bikes and running and walking
all year long.
All times of the year.
Yeah, except when there's a flood, they actually they close off the access points for your own safety again.
Yeah, although it seemed like you could still be on the island. They just kind of shut down like any any stairways or pathways that took you closer to the shore. So even in, protecting public safety, it might have just been easier for them to just put up barriers at the stops and at the bridges where you can get onto the island. Yeah. But they still wanted the people to enjoy.
It's still possible to access it if you really want to. That's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, now the weather has started getting nicer. I'm not sure if it's good enough for a swim in the Donau, but could rent a boat, float around the Alte Donau. It's a favorite thing of our family to do.
Yeah. Well, I hope after all this talk about flood protection, you're pumped.
Hopefully you haven't drifted away and stopped listening. Hopefully you're overflowing with joy.
Overflowing with joy.
Listening to the current of our conversation.
Yes. And
as we moved our way, as we flowed through topic to topic.
Right.
All right. Well,
you have any more for me?
I'm working on them. They're just not floating to the surface. Hey, all right. Guten bye.
I guess it is guten bye. This didn't end well.
Oh, that did great.
You think so? Oh, let's see what Spruce Wayne has to say about that.
All right.
Guten bye.
Thanks for listening to this Schnitz and Giggles episode.
Remember to follow and subscribe if you want more content like this from the Edelweisscrackers.
Don't be shy about commenting or leaving feedback. Until next time.
So long.
Farewell.
Good Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.